Welcome, everybody.
Hi.
Hi there.
Thank you.
My name is Jack Laws. I am a naturalist, a wildlife biologist, and a nature artist. And I want to welcome all of you to the Santa Clara Valley's Wildlife Festival. Sorry, try that again. Wildflower Festival. Welcome to the Santa Clara Valley Wildlife. Why can't I say that? Wildflower Festival. It is. If you've been downstairs and had a chance to look around, you've got a little glimpse of the incredible biodiversity of the Bay Area, and I encourage you to really explore that room. It's a great chance just to get reacquainted with old friends and to meet some new ones. Those wildflowers are absolutely beautiful down there. The team from the chapter of the Audubon Society here. California Native Plant Society. So I just came from a birding festival, and so I had birds and wildlife and Audubon on the brain.
We don't mind.
And so it's just spectacular down there. So what I want to do is to show you in 1 hour a bunch of tricks to help you go back down there and draw those flowers. There's fantastic light in that room, and you can get a really good handle on the diversity, come on in, of plants that are out there. And also there are tables along the side. You can find a little place to draw some of those plants. Really, really terrific experience to reacquaint yourself with the wildflowers that are down there. To make most of the time, I'm going to start by asking you a few questions. How many people are there any professional artists in the room? How about people who draw on a regular basis and enjoy doing that? People who are fairly new to drawing. Okay, that's most of us. People who are completely new to drawing, and the idea of picking up a pencil makes your palms start to sweat. All right. Here's the good news. People used to think of drawing that it's this gift, that some people are just magically drawers, and other people, hey there, other people are just out of luck. But every year we find again and again and again that this is absolutely false. It's not the way that it works. Drawing is a skill, and it's a skill that everybody can develop to actually a very high degree of technical competency if you just start doing it. And as adults, it's really scary to try anything that you're not already good at. And so we don't want to start, we don't want to try. But many people, often after they've retired, they're looking for something else to do. They say, well, I can't draw a straight line, but they pick up a pencil, they pick up a brush, they say, maybe I'll take an art class. And what do they discover? You start doing it, turns out you can do it. And there's really no secret to it other than this. If you draw, you will get better at drawing. That's really all there is to it. You don't need any special tool, any special pen, any special class. The more you draw, the better and better and better and better it will get. Taking classes, reading books, exploring different sorts of art supplies, these sort of things, these can speed up parts of things. But the most important thing is to get yourself drawing on a regular basis. And as we come into this wildflower season, going out whenever you're hiking and drawing and sketching what you see with those plants is a very good way to get yourself to learn the wildflowers and also just train yourself to draw on a regular basis. I'm going to show you a bunch of shortcuts that will help you draw flowers. Because I find that when I was starting to draw flowers, there were several problems that I regularly ran into. And how do you handle those sorts of things? So I'm going to show you some of these tricks, and then we're going to have an opportunity to go back downstairs with our sketch pads and draw up a storm. I'm going to be here throughout the rest of the show and drawing and painting. So if while you're out there and you're drawing, if something is giving you trouble, or you want comments or feedback on something that you're doing, please feel free to, you will not be bothering me. Come on up and say, hey Jack, what are your thoughts about this? I'm having trouble doing this sort of thing. How should I approach it? You'll have all those plants out there to practice with and work with. Right? It'll be a lot of fun. So, shortcuts to drawing flowers. Here's one trick to help you draw. It turns out it takes different parts of your brain there's one part of your brain that can kind of focus on details, and there's another part of your brain that is really good at kind of getting the big picture of something. And so with drawing details, you can get in there and you can work on drawing the perfect petal. Right? You draw your petal, and then you draw the next petal next to it, and then the next petal around, right? And the next petal around. And then you kind of step back from it and you realize, oh my gosh, these are not at all symmetrical around the edges of my flower. Anybody had that experience? Right? Or you're drawing around and it doesn't come back to fit in the same place. Or if you're drawing people, you're drawing this person, you like draw the perfect nose and the perfect eye and the perfect eye. You're going, this really doesn't look like my sister. What's going on here? And then you realize, oh my gosh, like the head is way too big. Right?
Yeah.
Or there's no forehead on this drawing. And so those are like big picture things. And when you're in there focused on those details, your brain can't see the big picture. It's really different regions of your brain. And some people try to get their brain to switch back and forth really quickly. It's hard to do. So a great trick is to start off by not looking at the details. Start off by looking at the big picture. What is the overall shape of this flower? And in doing that, you can also look at what is the underlying geometry that the symmetry of this flower is based on. If I can capture that geometry, if I can capture sort of that big kind of oomph of the shape, then I can drop my details in on top of that. And this picture is going to work. So you give yourself a scaffolding, a framework that you hang your details on. If you are drawing an iris and you're in there like drawing all these wobbly petals and sepals and these other crazy structures that are sticking up, you're so focused on those little wobbly edges that the whole thing is not going to make sense to the different parts relative to each other. So you start with the big picture and then you move out from there. So I'm going to show you a few tricks on sort of drawing big picture. I'm going to be demonstrating things in the middle of the room, and that'll be hard to capture on this, so you might have to move it around because I'm not going to be all up here. I'm thinking that because of the number of people and sort of the arrangement of the room and the number of specimens that we have, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be describing a lot of techniques and demonstrating them. In this 1-hour workshop, there's not, to make the most of our time, there's not going to be a lot of chances to practice what we're talking about here. What we'll do is just pack this 1 hour full of tricks, and then we can hit the floor downstairs and draw up a storm. Does that sound good?
Great. Yes.
All right, so here we go. I'm going to start off with a little drawing demonstration for you. And so I need a volunteer. Sir, come on up and choose a flower that we'll use for the demo.
I don't have to have the blazing stars.
So this one right here. All right, so we'll leave it in the water, and we're going to bring this over to, you happen to be sitting at just the right table. I'm going to bring this right here. All right. So here's my plant that I want to draw. When I'm demonstrating things, I'm going to start sort of showing you tricks, kind of looking straight into the bowl of the flower, getting the symmetry of it, and then we're going to be taking that and moving it around. By the end of this 1 hour, we're going to be looking at sort of drawing plants at a sort of 3D sideways angle, so the plant's going to be foreshortened. And that's going to be kind of this demonstration that I'm going to do here. I'm going to be showing you that lots of the plants that you're going to be looking at are based on a circle. If you can find the circle in the flower, that's going to really help you understand the structure of it. The circle, when you tilt that to the side, makes an oval or an ellipse. So what I will often do is when I'm close to a flower like this, I close one eye so that my two eyes are not seeing the same flower from two different angles. Right? So just take your finger, close one eye, and cover somebody's face with your finger, put it on their nose, then switch eyes. Right? So you'll cover a distant person's nose, right? Switch your eyes, right? You see that? So yes, parallax, your two eyes are seeing this from different directions. So I'm actually looking at this flower from two different angles. There are two different flowers that I'm seeing. I'm only going to draw one here. So to make that easier, so my brain doesn't have to translate 3D to 2D. I close one eye, I see 2D, I draw 2D. All right? So I'm going to close one eye, and I'm going to trace the ellipse around the edge of this little flower in the air. And I'm going to copy that down to my paper. Right? I'm going to notice where the bottom of that flower is. And is it going to be right in the middle? Yes for some flowers, no for others, no for this one, and we'll find out why shortly. You notice I'm making all my original drawings with this light blue pencil. This is what's called a non-photo blue pencil, and what I like about it is it makes a very faint ghosted line. And I'm pressing harder with it here so that everybody can see. But when I'm doing my regular sketching, I'll block in the whole plant with this, and then drop it on the floor. And then I've got a framework, and then I pick up my other pencil and I start drawing in my details. So I was just downstairs drawing a few plants. These all started, if you look very carefully, there actually are little ghosted blue lines in the background. And if you didn't see it on the first round, I can show you drawings later. But this is actually the way I start all my drawings. All right, so now, back to my little buddy here. I'm going to block in the locations of my petals based on a little bit of an understanding of geometry, which we'll go over on the board. All right. So this is fairly sketchy. I'm just getting in the major sizes and positions of things. All right, so no detail yet. I'm just generally placing my petals. And then I stop and I look at it and say, does this feel right to me? As how are the proportions of this? That's looking pretty good. It's a really good idea to sort of stop and check your proportions and these sorts of things before you really get into drawing your details. And to make sure that the stem that comes up next to the bottom of the flower. All right. And now I'm going to start drawing in details. But I'm going to be drawing them on top of this framework that already is kind of blocked in my basic shape for me. So there's a petal that is pointing towards me, right? And I'm seeing part of the back sides of it, part of this side of it, because it's pointing towards me and it curls in on itself. And people will sometimes like, how do you draw something like that? Well, maybe you better just draw it from this way. I'm going to show you a trick that I use, and I'm going to be, as I'm talking, as I'm drawing, I'm going to be talking out loud and describing what I do. What I do, I close one eye, and I look at it as there's one half of the far side of the petal, and I just look at that as a flat shape, and I copy that shape down. Right? Instead of thinking of it as this thing that's curling towards me, I just imagine if I could cut this out, it would curve up like that. All right? I'm going to do the same on this side. It comes up, it then comes down towards me. I really have to look at the plant, because you can't make this stuff up. And then I see part of the back side of the petal retreating into the distance. And there is a petal that does a little kind of pinch to a point pointing towards me. Okay. And I got that by drawing one shape, putting it next to another shape. I'll be demonstrating that on the board. All right? Now I've got a petal that is coming off to the side. And what I'm going to do is I've got these things that sort of show me where roughly this petal goes. But it's very important to believe the plant about what it really is doing. And so I have this little part that's curling up here. I'm seeing part of the underside. And so that you can kind of see in the back, what I did is I drew this as one shape that I was seeing. And that was next to another shape that I was seeing. So I looked at this, not thinking of this as petal curling towards me. I was thinking of this as just a flat shape next to another flat shape. And I'm just putting these adjacent to each other. I'm seeing a petal coming down towards me here. It has this, I'm seeing two shapes. That it's got a flat side and a curved side. And it's sort of like a, and so actually the flat side has a slight bow to it. And then from that it curves up. So there's one side. Next to, what is this one going to do? It's going to curve up. Top, it's not going to be an even curve. It's going to be sort of a bell with the skew towards me and then go out. And so I find it actually often is good to talk out loud what I'm doing. It really gets your brain to really engage with what are you seeing. So I did put that little curve on the other side, and there's another petal. Made by draw one side, then draw the other side. Now these other ones are going to be, they're more symmetrical. I'm seeing them flat on, I'm not seeing both sides. But they're also partly obscured by this nest of stamens that are coming out. So what I will often do is I'll start drawing the things that are closest to me and work my way progressively into the background. That way, I can do that if I've got everything sort of blocked in here. Right? It's hard to do that if you're just drawing, you want to sort of finish the outside of this flower so that things will get in the right place. But I know that things are going to get in the right place because I've got that blue pencil now. So I can draw this part, then I can draw the next part that's behind it, the next part that's behind it. So I stop drawing the next object when I get to the part that I've already drawn. So I don't have to get in there and erase things on the inside. So I've got this nest of stamens that are coming out like this, and they are going to partially obscure things. If I drew all these petal parts coming down, that would really get in my way of all my stamens coming out. And I want to show these curves. So I'm going to close one eye again, and I'm going to just get myself to notice what's happening by drawing in the air around this. So we're coming out straighter towards me, more curving towards the sides. And where are the tops of those coming to? They are coming to, from my angle, I can actually sort of see a little line. I'm going to draw that on here. So what I'm doing is I'm drawing, I'm going to be having this bowl of stamens, and I'm drawing a light blue pencil bowl like this, and that's going to help me bring my stamens up to the right place. All right, so I've just drawn my little bowl in here with my blue pencils. Now, a trick to getting, if you ever drawn a picture and it looks really flat, one trick to getting depth in a picture is that the parts that are closer to you use more detail and use a heavier line, and that will push that part of the drawing forward. If you draw with the same weight all the way through the drawing, it flattens it out. Right? So if you, for instance, notice the side of that petal that is closer to you, I made that heavier. And the farther side drops back. I'm going to be doing the same thing with the stamen that are closer to me. They're going to be more ghosted in on the back. If I do it all the same, they're going to flatten out and appear to be in the same plane. So I'm going to come also parts of the drawing that get a lot of detail are going to come forward. put in a little nest of stamen. Now I'm going to drop those two other petals in behind it. This one is sort of a crooked heart shape. Here. And I'm going to let this line peter out somewhere into the stamen. This one is going to we're so used to thinking of drawing the two sides of the petal symmetrically. If you're looking at something often at an angle, the shapes of the two sides are not going to be symmetrical. So expect that and look for it. So this one is going to, so the bulges of this one, hit this one first, and then that one's going to do that. Bulge here. Then come around and start to draw all sorts of crazy leaves and other business behind here. So parts of the drawing that you want to really pop towards you, those parts can also get more detail, more contrast on them. And so that is a quick pencil sketch. I like using watercolor. And so I'm going to do a real quick and dirty watercolor, test your color on the side before it hits the paper.
Does the water dissolve the blue pencil?
No, it doesn't. They're not water-soluble pencils. If you use it really heavily, it kind of creates a waxy layer that is hard for the pencil to adhere to. But with this sort of light, quick drawing, you're not going to build up so much of it that it really gets in your way. And
What thickness lead do you use?
when I am making a careful scientific illustration, I use a 0.3. This is a 0.5 that I'm using because it makes a heavy mark that everybody around the room can see. But those other illustrations that I passed around, those are drawn with a 0.3. I usually use a fairly soft lead, perhaps a 2B, or not 2B. And there is black.
Oh, I get it.
All right, so I'm doing a bunch of tricks, and I'm now going to show you what those tricks are. All right?
Can you show one?
On the blackboard.
So I'm going to be showing a bunch of tricks up there on the board of what I was doing here. That people say like, oh yeah.
At what point do you go from one eye to two eyes?
When I'm looking at the flower, I close one eye. When I'm looking down here, I use both.
Yeah.
So when I'm using both down here, I know when my paper hits the pencil. With one eye closed, I don't know how far my brush is from the paper. Isn't that cool? So this is the kind of brush that I use when I'm in the field, and I now just use it in the studio. It's the only kind of brush that I use. So if you look through my field guides, all those illustrations in there, they were drawn with these brushes. They're inexpensive, they cost $9, and they've got the water inside of them. When they run out, you just open that up, fill it up again. The cap snaps on the back, and then what I do is I just take one of my old socks, put that on my wrist, and I am, so I can clean it by giving a wipe and a rub here. Then if you look, it's clean. There's no more stuff in there. I'm then going to come along I can pick up more color. And then when I'm ready to go to another color, I just give it a squeeze and a wipe on here. And they're synthetic bristles, so it comes right off. Another advantage of doing this in the field is that you're not developing that jar of mucky, dirty water. And you can't just pour that out on the landscape, because if you're using good watercolors, you've got cadmium, cobalt, little heavy metals and stuff like that, chromium, these sort of things. I mean, the squirrels are not going to appreciate it. You know, the little poppy that you're drawing when you leave, it's going to go. No. So paper I use for careful scientific illustrations. I use a piece of Bristol board. This other stuff is just lightweight sketching paper.
Oh, the watercolor doesn't go through it.
Watercolor doesn't go through it. You know, if you use watercolor really heavily, it'll make the paper go. But you know, for field sketches, that's fine. And but a heavier paper is not going to wobble as much. And you know, you can get some pieces of watercolor paper that are so thick like a piece of wood. All right. This is all the types of paper that I use. I've got listed on my website, which is johnmuirlaws.com. If folks are interested, I brought a bunch of these blue pencils. They cost $1. If you want to get one of those paintbrushes, they cost $9. I've also got those in this box. And if you're interested in one of these sketch bags, I also brought these. Did anybody bring a watercolor kit with them?
Watercolor what?
A watercolor set with them?
No.
Okay, then don't worry about that.
Watercolor set.
Yes, I have a watercolor set.
She's got hers with her little Winsy Newton,
Excellent.
one of her carry.
Before you leave, let me just take a look at your set and make sure that the color selection that you have there's certain colors that I think you really want to have, and I'll make sure they're in your palette. If they're not, I've got some tubes in here, and I'll squirt them into your palette for free. All right, so here we go. Tricks on drawing the flowers. All right, you can do this. First, let's think flower geometry. If you can take the shape of a flower and reduce it with your blue pencil to a circle, you are a happy camper. Right? Because off the circle, we can get our flower symmetry really easily. If you're focused on the details, you have the problem. I draw my petal on my 5-petal flower, and somewhere about here I realize that this is just not working. But each petal is perfect. I'm like, which one do I erase? Oh, 5. All right, so how do we arrange these? All right? You're usually going to find flowers with these sorts of symmetry. Flowers with 3 petals, 4 petals, 5 petals, 6 petals, or a random number of many petals. Right? So if we get comfortable with handling 3, 4, 5, 6, many, and that kind of symmetry, could I look at a circle and immediately know where to put my petals in on this? That would be nice, wouldn't it? Yes. Right. So what you want to do is think 3, 4, 5, 6, many. How am I going to handle this? The many is easy. All right? What you're going to do is, let's say this is my daisy. I've got my circle out there. You can just start drawing petals and stop when it's crowded enough. Right? And it's actually better if that's not symmetrical. Many is not going to be symmetrical. Often, on a daisy, technically, botanically speaking, each one of these petals is actually, botanically, its own flower. And if you're curious about that, ask some of the staff folks downstairs, just show me, what's up with the asters? What's this I hear? They're like, it's actually a cluster of flowers. So you give your love a daisy. You say, I love you so much, I just gave you a couple hundred flowers. Every little bump in the center there, every little bump in the middle is its own individual flower. That's how generous you are. Right? But wait, let's say we wanted to do, another easy one is the 4-petaled flower. And you just draw crosshairs through it. That shows you where the middle of this thing is. And now you have, yay, 4 symmetrical petals. Each one has a buddy on the opposite side. You can also do, let's say you're drawing a poppy. There are 4 broad petals here. This time, there's 1 petal, there's 2 petals, 3 petals, 4 petals. Those crosses are where the edges of the petals are instead of the middle of the petal. Make sense? All right, but getting the symmetry on 3, on 5, is going to be a little bit more complex. So here's what we're going to do. Let's take a look at 3. If I put like a perfectly symmetrical triangle in here, right, that would help. How do you do that? Where are the corners going to be? Well, one's going to be at the top. Where in here are those other 2 going to go? All right, not out here at the sides. Somewhere down here, right? But how far down do you go?
Shane length.
Well,
I'm ready.
4 and 2.
here's the middle of this. Here's the bottom of it. I'm going to go halfway through that, a quarter of the way down. That is going to be where I put my other 2 points. Right? What do we do for 6-petal?
The top.
Yeah, there we go. Bonk, bonk,
Oh.
bonk. Or the way you can think of 6-petal is you're just going to cut each of those remaining spaces in half after you do your 3. So if I've got my 6 there, all right, look at this. When you're drawing a 6-petal flower, what you'll usually find is that 3 of them in one set are on top of the other 3 and have a slightly different look to them. All right? So expect that. Look for it on 6-petal flowers. Are we good with 3 and 6? All right. Let's do 5. All right. So I used to say, just draw a star in the middle. But who can draw a symmetrical star? Right? I cannot. So here's what we do. One's at the top. We're going to think of the equator of this. And this is the one where we're going to be kind of eyeballing it. But the way that it's going to go is that we're going to have, so on a star there are 2 shoulders and 2 feet, right? Right. The shoulders are, actually let's do the feet first from the bottom here. The feet are just going to swing up off the bottom of this circle a little bit. All right. The shoulder, and how much is a little bit? I know this is vague, but with this flower, you just have to kind of roughly get it in there. You're going to go up a little bit here. Off the equator here, you're just going to go up a little bit more than a little bit. Right? So this is just a little bit up. This is a little bit more than a little bit. And if you can do that, you have a roughly symmetrical star. Or, again, here's my circle. Here's my top. I can visualize the equator to it. I'm going to go a little bit above that. Here's the bottom. I'm going to go. I want these to be roughly equal distances apart. It does not have to be exact. All right, so with my blue pencil, I'll draw my circle. I'll put in little dots. If I get something that's roughly equal, great. If they're not, if one is, I go like, that's not quite working for me. These are just little dots on your circle, and it's easy to move these points around. Once I've got that, I can then get in there and draw my careful petals. And if one is a little bit off, that's okay. It'll sort of give it more of this organic feel. But if you're going to avoid one being radically, severely off. Does that make sense?
Were you born able to draw a circle?
No. If I am really trying to draw a symmetrical circle, I get all sorts of goofy things. So here's a trick for drawing a circle. All right, is instead of drawing a circle and trying to get it right on the first time, what you want to do is make several circles and then just sort of pooch it out where it feels wrong, and you make several lines, and eventually you're going to average something. Your eye is going to be drawn to the one that's more right, right? And then you can kind of, if you want to, you can sort of reinforce that. But you make several circles. Like so here, like when I tried to make just one, I got this sort of thing. Here I just made one. This one I did a much better job. And look, there's a few circles there, right? So what I'm doing is I'm going, whoa, But you do that, and people go, oh, you just made a perfect circle, right? So several lines, your brain will kind of look at those and go, not over there. Yep, that's the one I want over there. This is great for drawing flowers where you're looking straight down on it. But what happens if you want to look at a flower at an angle? Right?
Perspective.
Perspective. We're going to do now. Are we ready for flowers in perspective?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, erase this business?
Did that cover straw or pea flowers?
Oh, that's a great question. So what about bilaterally symmetrical flowers? So here I have a monkey flower, and I look down the throat of this thing. It's got two little wings on top, a couple out here, these other ones falling down the bottom. But the only way you can really cut this flower in half and get two sides that look the same is straight down the middle. That's called being laterally symmetrical. I am bilaterally symmetrical. If you cut me in half this way, the bottom half looks different than the top half. If you cut me this way, this side is roughly the same as this. Right? So I am bilaterally symmetrical, the trivia man. Right? When I'm drawing a bilaterally symmetrical flower, right, getting 5 points in symmetrical locations around the outside edge is not helpful, right? Because they're not set up on this, what's called radial symmetry. So this is true for all the 3, 4, 5, 6 many-petaled radially symmetrical flowers. For bilaterally symmetrical ones, keeping track of that midline is going to be really, really, really helpful. And so what I'll do is draw that line through the center of the flower, keep track of the middle of it, so that if I have, and then I'm going to look at where out here do my petals come in. And then I'm going all right here, all right here. So I'm going to have to look at my individual flower to say where will these different lumps go. But I want to be thinking of these having their partner on the other side. So I'm going to look for that. Expect it and look for it. Another thing that's very helpful for bilaterally symmetrical flowers is if you're going to be, say, drawing a lupin, is first move yourself around so you are looking at this lupin head on. And say, when I'm looking at you head on, here is what I am seeing. All right, draw one of those little blossoms head on. And then, to help you sort of see what's going on, I'm going to draw one of these blossoms in the side view. So right next to that, I'll say, what is your blossom doing? I look back at it, and then you have a little back from here, and then you have this other part here that comes down like that. And, right? So get yourself a side view and a front view. Once you understand those two views, you're going to be drawing a lot of little lupin flowers in there, but you already kind of understand kind of what you're getting in for. And so if you have perhaps a whorl of these little flowers around the lupin, I can start with, here's my flower. Remember, I do the one that is closest to me first. Right? My blue pencil says I've got a big block of these things sticking out here. Then I can, using a little bit less pressure, draw, and less detail, draw those ones that are sticking out on the sides. And then you can get these sort of whorls of things. But it really helps to have understood the side and the front in order to be able to do this. Does that help?
Yeah.
And again, I'm doing the same thing, drawing what is in front first, and then layering things further back. Right? We ready to start tilting flowers?
Yeah, sure.
All right, let's go there. It'll be fun. Follow me, right?
Yeah, we're with you.
Now, if I can do that one straight on, it's actually not going to be that scary to do the one that is at an angle. So here's what we do, all right? So we'll do a tilted flower with how many petals? How many petals?
5.
5 petals tilted, all right? So a circle tilted makes an ellipse. All right, doing the same thing. All right. Now, before, on the 5-petaled one, I had one at the top. I had 2 that were a little bit off the bottom, and 2 that were a little more than a little bit off the top, right? Same thing here. Now look at this. From the center of my flower here, put more detail in on the ones that are closer to you. Foreshortened 5-petal flower. I'd also probably, with my pen, come along, reinforce some of these lines, make them just a little bit stronger, so that helps. Remember, the heavier line pulls forward. I might reinforce that right in there. Those ones, just a little bit stronger edge. You don't have to like, right? But a little bit of a subtle, stronger edge is going to pop that towards you. Does that make sense?
So how are you looking at this flower? It's tilted where?
So it's tilted away from you.
Oh, okay.
So the bottom of it would be coming out here.
Center's in the center.
Right.
Oh, okay. Is it always, even when it's in perspective, tilted?
So is
Is the
the...
center between the...
I think you're foreshortening it, yeah.
Ooh, that is the...
Bad question.
No, that is such a beautiful segue.
Her question. Oh, right.
Right?
Her question.
Right. So what they're asking is the center of the flower. Right. Here's my ellipse. And the center of the flower is, let's say, if I did this symmetrically, is right there. Is that? Let's say this is a 3-petaled flower. I'm going to have one go a quarter of the way up it. All right. Go a quarter of the way up there. Boom. Oops. Not over there. Boom. Is the center of it always going to be in the center? So, before we hit that question, let me pause on that.
Sorry.
I want to just stop to see if this idea made sense to people. How I got this into. Let me do an example with the many petals. All right? Because this will make this. I think this makes the whole business very clear. Are you dry erase? Dry erase. Many petaled flower. Here's the center of my flower. What's going to be happening is that there's a petal that is on the side of a flower that is foreshortened. right, it is still going to be the same length. If there is a petal on the top or the bottom of a foreshortened flower, close one eye. You see how my arms appear to be shorter? My arms are foreshortened, right? Close one eye, and that way you won't have 3D vision. Right? You see how this arm looks shorter than when I do this? Right? That's what's going on with this petal. So if this is the middle of my flower, here's petal 1. Here's light blue drawn petal up there. This one is here. This one is here. Each one of these petals is going to point towards the middle here. So if there's a petal coming in here, it's going to be right in there. If there's a petal here, it's going to be there. If there's a petal here, it's going to be here. If there's a petal here, it's going to be. People get into trouble because they will do this flower. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So here's what people do when they get in trouble, when they try to do this. They'll start off pretty well, and then they'll do this.
Uh-oh. Yeah. Yeah. No.
So what I did differently here is that these ones here and these ones here are coming straight in, straight up and down. These ones here on the side are all focusing here. These ones on the side here are all focusing here. What I want is every petal points towards that spot I'm saying. So this petal here is pointing to here. This petal here. So another way of thinking of this is this way. If we take away some of these petals, we have this drawing. Right? So if I just had this petal here, and this petal here, and this petal here, and this petal here, and that petal there, one other thing that is going to go on with this is that the petals that are in here are going to appear skinnier. These ones here are going to appear to be their full width. So as I'm coming in here, I'm going to get progressively skinnier as I'm in here, and then get broader as I come here. These petals are not increasing their thickness, they're just not going to lose any.
So
And a lot of people, sorry.
are the flowers on the top also as broad as the bottom?
That's a great question. So she's saying, you know, we learned about perspective this way with the railroad tracks, right? So the railroad track ties that are furthest away from us, they're getting smaller. So she's saying, shouldn't these petals that are in the back be smaller? And the answer is this. It actually depends on how close you are to the flower. Right. This railroad tracks phenomenon for big objects that are further away, or a small object that is close to you. May I borrow your book for a second? Sure. All right. So close one eye. All right. And when I hold this close to your eye like this, you see a really big side, and you can see a very small side here. Yes. Right. So when you're here, you can really see that dramatically. Right. But look at it from the back of the room. From back there, you actually don't notice a very big difference between the length of this and the length of this. Right? If it's up here in your face, boom, it's big. Right? But actually, at this distance to that small flower, I'm not seeing that as a dramatic thing. If we're looking at on something really big like this table, I can actually see that this edge, and also close to that, right? I can see that this edge is bigger than that. But on a smaller object, and the further I am away from it, that becomes less and less and less. So the nice thing is you don't really have to worry about that effect. Right? Yes, if you are trying to show like if you're trying to do like this picture kind of from the perspective of being a bee there on the flower, right? Then you're going to have this extreme perspective really, really in your face. This is kind of exaggerated, like in Spider-Man comics, where there's always like this big hand coming out at you or something like that.
Giorgio.
Yeah. So yeah, if you're doing Georgia O'Keeffe scale stuff, like like it is pretty crazy here in this orchid, right? Then that is something that you have to take into account. But sort of in the sort of field sketching distance with the size of a flower, we're really not seeing this really dramatically. So I would say just take a look at the flower in front of you. And like when I'm looking at this one here at this distance, I'm not seeing that. So I'm not going to worry about that. I'm not going to go. Okay. Are you ready to go one step deeper? Okay, we're almost there. Almost there. All right. What we're going to do now is the question was, is the center of the flower always in the center of the flower? All right. And here's the answer. It depends. Right? But what does it depend on? It depends on, does anybody have a piece of paper that I could borrow, just a 8.5 by 11 piece of paper?
Is it big enough?
So who's got a big, anybody have a big piece of paper? Oh, look at that. So thank you, sorry to have you turn that down.
That's all right.
I like that sketch. That's great. That's great. This is what I want. All right, what I'm going to do is, can I borrow your pen?
Certainly.
All right, I'm going to make a big,
No, you're perfect.
big circle
Just
here.
do whatever you do, thank you.
Okay.
Oops. Oh. It is a very carefully cut out circle. Precision is amazing. Now, here's the middle of the circle. All right? So there's the middle of the circle. Now, when I tilt this, the middle of the circle stays roughly in the middle of the circle. So as I tilt it here, the top-down dimension gets less. Are people seeing that? But the middle of the circle is basically there in the middle of the circle. Why? Because this is a flat flower. But are all flowers flat?
No.
No. As these poppies are going, what about me? Right? They are cone-shaped. So what I'm going to do now is make this a cone-shaped flower. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this I'm going to do it here, here, and here so that everybody can see what I'm doing. All right, so first for you folks and our friends at home, right? You're looking down the barrel of this flower. The center is in the center, yes? Right? Watch where the center goes relative to the edge of the lip. All right, you see that drop down?
Yeah.
All right. Now tell me when it gets to the bottom of when it reaches this lip.
Sounds like
Stop.
that. Let's
Stop.
take four.
Yeah.
All right. So now I'm going to tilt it slightly more and watch what you start to see. You start to see the bottom here. So for these folks here, all right, see the center in the center,
Yeah.
right? And especially if you're up close, you might want to close one eye so you don't have 3D vision. All right. I start to tilt.
Oh, yeah.
All right. You see that center drop down?
Yep.
Like, oh my goodness. And then it comes, all of a sudden you start to see the bottom appearing on the underside. So what we're seeing here, all right, so you're looking down the throat of the flower. The center is in the center, yes?
Yes.
In the front row, you might want to close out one eye. All right. Now, as I tilt it, do you see how the center spot drops relative? You're actually seeing it higher on the top than on the bottom. All right. So what's going on if we diagram this? And we're going to do something really cool. What goes on if we diagram this? You look at it from the top. At this point, it seems exactly, so here's going to be the cone-shaped. This one over here is going to be the flat flower. Now, as I tilt it, the outside edge, which is a circle, that becomes an ellipse, right? So the outside top edge the green circle, right? As I tilt it, see how that becomes an ellipse? All right? Ignore this part on the bottom. Sorry, it's all jaggedy rough. All right? You ignore the part on the bottom. As I tilt it, that outside edge becomes an ellipse. This, I tilt it, it becomes an ellipse. No difference. Here, though, the center is there. Here, the center is there. The degree to which, and people say, like, is there a mathematical relationship, something that I have to, now somehow calculate between how squished this ellipse is and how far down this thing drops? Good news is no.
Good.
All right? It will drop faster in a steeper cone. Right? So any way you draw it is going to be possible. Right? But it will go, you'll have this thing less scrunched and that spot closer to the bottom if it's a steep cone. Right? We squish this one even more. Center still in the center. We squish this one even more. Now, the center is down there. Right.
Squish it or tilt?
Oh, we can't
Sorry, tilt it.
Can we see it? No.
You can see it, but you can't see it in the bowl.
Okay.
You can see it because it's here. And actually, if you, I was looking at a greeting card recently that had a picture of a morning glory on it. And I'll do you sort of the kind of diagram that they used. Sort of there was this bowl of this morning glory. You had the center of the morning glory here, right, and here.
Well, that can happen.
Okay.
Stamens.
Well, no. You can have stamens that attach here and shoot up to here, but this is actually drawn the bottom of the morning glory, right? And we can't do that. So if there is a stamen that attaches here, it can come up so that you're visible here, but you wouldn't see stamens coming out of a thing here.
Right.
Oops. Right? So just don't give your flower two bottoms. Right? Now, does this make sense?
Yeah.
Now, if If you're thinking like, whoa, what was the thing in the middle? If you go to my website, which is johnmuirlaws.com, on the little menu, there's a thing that says nature drawing. Pull it down to drawing plants. There's a series of videos that I have of these sorts of things. There's also, I have a little plant model that you can download, cut out, and sort of follow along at home, messing around with it. So you can check those out. There's also, tricks on drawing curling leaves, all these sorts of things in some illustration videos. So please check those out. Those were done in cooperation with the California Native Plant Society, an excellent organization. Anybody here remember? I'm going to encourage those who aren't actually to join. There's all sorts of really great classes, activities, field trips, meetings where you can learn about the biodiversity of this state. It's a lot of fun, and this organization does some really tremendous conservation work in the state. And you can learn more about it at one of the tables downstairs. So please consider joining. It's also a great way to really get yourself familiar with the biodiversity of the area. You make a drawing. What is this? You can bring it into the next CNPS meeting. They have regular chapter meetings. This is a very active chapter down here. You can bring it in and sort of show your friends, like, hey, what's this? You also get to meet all the cool nature people that way. It's a lot of fun. I'm going to show you one more thing. Let's see. Right, so it is now the official end time. Would people be okay if we went perhaps 7 minutes over? And I showed you one more thing to kind of take this one step further.
Please. Okay.
You down with that? All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the cone-shaped flower, and this looks very much like a poppy. If you're drawing your poppy, so let's actually. I'm going to first make this a 4-petaled poppy, and then I'm going to say, like, what would you do if you were drawing something like this that was cone-shaped, 6 skinny petals? Right. So we're going to take the idea of these sort of multiple petals. We want them symmetrically arranged, and now it's a cone-shaped flower. All right? So what the secret is that if out here on the edge of this, let's say for my flower I had, here was petal number 1, here was petal number 2, here was petal number 3, and petal number 4 on my flat flower. I'm going to think of the same thing here, but I'm going to focus on where these edges, whoops, so I'm going to first do 4-petal, so a poppy here. So let's say my crosshairs on this, connected roughly in here. I'm now going to use the connecting points of these here to help me figure out my petals in here. And it's going to be actually a lot easier when you're looking at a real plant, because you can just go, where do these connect? Right? Instead of having to make it all up out of the top of your head. Right? It's much easier when you have this general geometric framework in your head as sort of the platonic ideal of flowerness. And then you can add to that what you're actually seeing with the real flower in front of you. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come along with, I'm going to come up this side, and my petal is going to come to this point here, and then back down to the base. So here I'm looking at the outside of this petal. And that petal, I go to the next one. This one is going to come up here, and I'm seeing a little bit of the outside of it, but then it actually is curling around. And what am I seeing on the other side? I am seeing it. That side's going to come in like that. I want to point it, again, down to the base of this. Over here, this petal is going to come up here, and it comes down here. I just want this line to end up pointing down towards the base, and then I have one last petal. There. 4 petals going around the cut. This one here, it's all the inside. This one here, it's all the outside. This one's neat. Look at what happened here. This one is part outside and part the inside of the petal. If I have very tall stamens sticking up, I might see some of those sticking up in here. But I'm not going to see where they actually insert onto the bud. Now let's do 6-petaled Sisyrinchum bellum, blue-eyed grass, unless they've changed that Latin name on me.
Ah,
You still is? Okay. Hey, you can't rely on plant names anymore. So what I'm going to do is I am going to draw my cone. I'm going to put 6 dots around the outside rim that'll show me where my 6 points are going to go to. And then I'm going to draw my petals in. Some flowers are naturally in a cone shape. I don't, by the way, on this, I don't want to let the kind of the corners go to a sharp point like an eye on each corner. They'll get closer and closer to a sharp point as it becomes more of an ellipse, but I want to keep it slightly rounded in there. Now I'm going to put, if I've got the 6 petals, I'm going to put those around this edge here. And what I'm going to do is I could do them sort of with the quarters that we talked about before when we were kind of stacking our points up. But to make it a little bit more interesting, I'm going to actually spin this flower a little bit so that this isn't going to be lined up symmetrically. And these aren't going to be horrid. So I could go bonk, 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 bonk. Then this petal would be lined up directly with this petal, and with them sort of super lined up like that. Sometimes that's really confusing in a drawing. They call this the problem of line adjacencies. So what that means is if I have one petal that's here and the next petal that's here, right, and you're drawing this on a 2-dimensional piece of paper, you get this thing that looks like this. Right? So is this one petal with a pattern on it? Right? Is this an actual shape here? This is an object that is suspended now by 2 thin filaments? Or is this one object in front of another? Right? So you get this sort of, our brains get confused with foreground, background. If you, instead of having things super adjacent, when I look at my flower and I go like, whoa, and sometimes I look at my flower and the things are really adjacent. The way I deal with that is just by kind of going, I look at it at a slightly different angle, and now these things that were lined up are a little bit off. If I'm looking at something and I see I have one petal here, and the next is coming like that, no problem with adjacencies.
That's partly because of your training as an illustrator too, though, isn't it? So that you can get clarity.
Yeah, well, yep. When I'm trying to draw, I'm trying to convey information.
Yeah.
I'm trying to help somebody look at this and say, right, I understand. I understand what you're trying to show me, right? And the more of these adjacencies I have, the more confusing that is. Similarly, if I have a landscape painting,
Trees coming out of a head.
let's say I had a pen that worked, hypothetically. There we go. So here's my landscape painting, and here's my little house, and it has a chimney on it, and I have this mountain that comes. All right.
Yeah.
Problem with adjacencies. If I had moved my point of perspective just a little bit over, the relationship between these two things would have been much more clear in my drawing. So, what I'm going to do, instead of having on, I'm going to have, remember on a 6-petaled thing, there is always one petal that is on the exact opposite side from you. So I'm going to just spin over, instead of here, I'm just going to put it right here, and its buddy is going to be here. Instead of being here, I'm going to move you here. Right? And this one is going to be here. And this one is going to be here, and its friend is going to be here. So I'm just kind of roughly, kind of close enough for government work. Now what I'm going to do is each one of these petals connects to where?
The center.
The center down here.
Here.
All right? So I'm not going to do this. I don't want these kind of coming down to the left. You know, people will draw, with here many petals, right? And then they'll do this. No, we don't want to go there. All right, everybody connects down here. One way I can kind of help my brain figure that out, I'm going to just lightly draw in these tracers. And now I have petal number 1, or a sepal, and out here its friend, out here this one. Make these lines a little bit longer, bolder. See how confusing it would be if instead of this, if I had been a little bit sloppy and did this.
Oh, there's one of those.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to avoid that little line adjacency there. Just have this one clearly come not, so that point shows up. And there is my 6-petal flower with a inferior ovary. Does that make sense? Are there any questions?
Please join me in thanking Jack. I'm sorry to be running over. Jack, you're around later. Are you around later? People can ask you questions.
So I'll be around. If people want to pick up a blue pencil or those sort of things, you can pick those up for me in the just out there. I'm going to suggest again people sign up to join the California Native Plant Society. And also, get yourself down there, celebrate those wildflowers. Those are all our local species. Those are your neighbors. Get to know your neighbors, and have a great day drawing. Any other questions, please feel free to ask, as I'll be down there drawing with you as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.